Welcome into our ESPN FC studios. Kay Murray and Don Hutchison here, about to be joined by Julien to talk about some of the transfer talk that we are hearing from England, some of it involving players right active in the World Cup right now. One of them, Vušković, to Brighton from Spurs, obviously has been out on loan with Hamburg, has been impressing. We're still getting to see this player in the World Cup as it stands right now. Tell us more about this potential deal here, Jules.
Yeah, I think it's a bit hard to understand if you're a Spurs fan, considering how promising Vušković is and has been, like you said, Kay, through the season in the Bundesliga with Hamburg. He's still a young defender, sure, but he's got really high ceiling in his potential. But Spurs signing Senesi and Van Hecke and still having, obviously, for now on their book, Van der Ven and Romero and Danso and even Draguzin and too many centre-backs. So they had to find a way. Vušković didn't want to stay, to be on the bench. He wanted to go somewhere where he could play. And then Brighton, very early on in the summer, put their first offer in. The first offer was around the £30 million mark. Now, as we can see on the graphic, the deal will be very close to the £50 million, which is probably the value of Vušković right now, which is a high value considering how young he is. But I think with what he showed so far already, both in the league last season and at this World Cup with Croatia when he's played, I think it's a fair price for him.
19 years old. Do you understand what Jules is saying about letting a player like this go?
I do. But it just shows you the power of what De Zerbi's thinking at Spurs, whether it's ins or outs. He's got total power and his stock's really high. So the hierarchy at Spurs absolutely have to trust the coach. And as Jules said, this player's going to come in. Van Hecke, I think, is a very, very good sign. I think that's a smart one. I think he knows the Premier League very well. So you're going to have to back the manager. When you're the hierarchy and you want to have an opinion, if you're a sporting director or you want to have an opinion, it seems like he's a bad one to lose because he's got, as Jules said, a really high ceiling. He's a good young player, but they might just feel as though he's not ready to play 30, 35 games in the Premier League. So they feel as though they're going to try and get money in for him.
Let me go to the next one. Chelsea signing right-back Marco Palestra for £47 million from Atalanta. And you wonder, with Xabi Alonso coming in at Chelsea, if he's looking for that Grimaldo role in at Chelsea with this player.
This kid's an outstanding player. He was attracting interest from all over Europe. It's a shame that, the Italian league, Serie A, have lost another really good young player. He might take a little bit of time, but when you watch him play, he's got a good understanding of the game. He's good in his duels. He can get forward. I think he's one that Chelsea fans are going to enjoy watching. Do
you agree with that, Jules?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen him a lot with Don because we obviously cover the Serie A a lot, and he's been incredible. I think one of the best players in the league last season with a Di Marco, for example. A perfect player for a Xabi Alonso system and a Xabi Alonso style of football, which again, I think points out, I think more and more that it will be a back three at Chelsea with wing backs. And for that, Palestra would be great. It's maybe a little bit too much money when you think about it for somebody who, has never played in the Champions League, for example, or in Europe, that has only a few caps for Italy, obviously not here at the World Cup, so won't get that kind of experience. But Inter Milan were there, they thought they had him, and then Chelsea went in, hijacked the deal with more money, both in transfer fees and in the contract. It's quite a big contract as well from a Chelsea perspective for Palestra, for such a young player. But like Don said, huge potential again. And for what we saw last season, very, very promising.
OK, while we're in London, let's go back to Spurs. Totali Fernandes, what more can you tell us about this, Jules?
Yeah, we expect the deal to be concluded really quickly with Spurs. He's a player that Roberto De Zerbi really, really wanted in an area in that midfield where Spurs needed a lot of reinforcement and rebuilding. Really, it's a lot of money. I think it's a lot of money. I mean, Don would be happy because that money goes to West Ham and hopefully they can reinvest that to come back up to the Premier League. But for a player who just went on to back-to-back relegation, because that's what happened to Totali Fernandes, who's a really good player and, again, young with a lot of promises and need a lot of work to be done, £85 million, I'm sorry, that's, for me, massively overpaid.
Yeah, I got asked the question on social media yesterday, and I was chatting, and I like him, by the way. He's a Champions League player, so Spurs have got a good player, but they've massively overpaid for him. I mean, West Ham will be happy with the £85 million straight-up fee, no add-ons. It's whether they can try and reinvest in it. And I sort of said, tongue-in-cheek, there's 100 players out there like Fernandes, you can find them. And someone went, go on then, name them. And he put me right in the back foot. So I did, and I said, listen, I said, listen, before you even look in France, where there's outstanding midfield players, Italy, Germany, Spain, and I reeled off 25, 26, 27 players that are playing in the Premier League that can do a similar job. Some are obviously more expensive, some are a little bit cheaper. You think that Ederson's going to go to Man United for 35 million from Atalanta. What a buy that is. So the fact that they've paid 85 million pounds for him, I don't think it's a gamble. I think he's a very good player, and he's at a good age, I think at 21, and he uses the ball well. He can get around the pitch. But it does feel as though you're taking a big chunk of money if you're Spurs, unless you're going to go crazy and sign Tonali for 100 and others. They're having a right good go. But I think I'm like Jules. I think there could have been cheaper options out there.
You mentioned Sandro Tonali. They've been pursuing him as well, and that looks as though that's taken another step closer to happening, doesn't it, Jules?
Yeah, that one as well. I mean, De Zerbi has been has played a key role in convincing Sandro Tonali to come to Spurs, even without a Champions League, for example, this season coming up, because Sandro Tonali is a Champions League player. There's just no doubt about it. So for him to agree to go to Spurs, it's really because of De Zerbi and because of the project that De Zerbi presented to him. It would be a massive loss, obviously, for Newcastle, and again, one of Don's former teams and favorite team. Mm-hmm. And in a sense that it's a lot of money for Tonali. I'm not really sure how Spurs, even with the sale of Vušković, can afford Van Hecke at the price they paid, Matheus Fernandes at the price they paid, Tonali at the price that it looks like they're going to pay. It's a lot of money on 3 players, and there's still a lot of other positions that they need to strengthen, especially probably for me, the number 9 position. So I don't know where they will go there, but if they can get Tonali and have a midfield of Tonali and Fernandes, I think they're ready to go next season for sure.
Okay, let's talk managers. Oliver Glasner to Nottingham Forest to replace Vitor Pereira. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I'm not sure why Pereira and Marinakis have sort of departed, but I think the appointment of Glasner is a good one, smart one. I think he's a very good manager. I think he organises really well. I think he's flexible. When you watch Crystal Palace, you watch him play in their system, but he's always sort of said, I can do different systems. I'm versatile. It was just at Palace, he had a set way of playing with 3 at the back and 2 wing backs, which were perfect for the Palace players. And he said, I want to evolve that. I can play with a 4, I can play with a 3. I'm versatile. So I think in terms of Forest, what they're getting a very good manager.
What do you make of this one, Jules?
I have to say I'm a bit baffled by why Oliver Glasner would accept that offer. Maybe it's the only one that he has on the table, but the idea for him when he decided to leave Palace and not extend at Palace was to go to a bigger club. And Forest might be a bigger club historically than Palace, sure, but they finished way behind Palace last season, and they're just not, I think, what Glasner expected really when he decided to part ways with Crystal Palace. So he must have been assured that they would spend a lot in the summer so that he could have a team that he could take to certainly a top 10 finish in the Premier League, and maybe doing well in the cups, maybe qualifying for Europe again and that kind of thing. Otherwise, what's the point? If you go there to fight against relegation when you just had 3 incredible years at Crystal Palace, if you're Oliver Glasner, that doesn't make any sense, really. So I would assume, and I don't know, but I would assume that Marinakis said, don't worry, we'll back you up massively on the transfer market. Yes, we're going to lose Elliot Anderson for a lot of money, but all of that money is going to be reinvested into your squad. You can go and pick the players you want, and we're going to go and get them for you. Because otherwise, I have to say, this one doesn't really make much sense from an Oliver Glasner point of view. I agree with Don. For Forest, sure, he's a great coach. He will make them better collectively and individually. But for him, I'm not sure this makes much sense.
Do you remember when he was at Palace and he criticised the hierarchy, he even criticised the Palace fans when he was sort of saying, don't forget where you've come from. If he goes anywhere near Marinakis and his criticism, he ain't going to last long. Because he's going to have to be smart, Glasner.
This is going to be an interesting one, and we'll see how it all plays out. But thanks so much, guys. Thanks, Jules, and thanks, Don, for your input on this. And make sure to stay up to date with all of the transfer talk over on our website every single day. New stories uploaded there.